Hello, everyone. Welcome to lecture one of computer system security. Uh, this is, of course, this is our second lecture. We had the lecture 0, which was about the computer systems, and we talked about different components that we see in computing systems. And this is the first lecture that we'll be talking about security. And of course, in this lecture, we will be talking about the concepts and terminology of security. We define different security terminologies, including assets. We talk about security triad or sometimes they call it security triangle. We also talk about threats and attacks. And we talk about functional requirements of security and fundamental security design approaches and principles. And we talk about attack surface and attack tree. And also we talk about computer security strategies, which are noun methods that people take in order to make computer systems secure. Okay, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to show to you is a definition of security or computer system security by National Institute of Standard and Technology. National Institute of Standard and Technology, which is also known as NIST, here you see, they have defined security as a measures and controls that ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information systems assets, including hardware, software, firmware information being processed, stored, and communicated. Okay, here, of course, this is a definition of the NIST for security of computer systems, but we see here that there are multiple kind of terms that we need to, of course, make them clear, and we need to define them. First of all, it talks about information system assets. We want to define what are the assets. There are some assets in computer systems or information systems in a more general way or broader way that includes hardware, software, firmware, and information. And those assets, they should be kept confidential. They should attain integrity and availability. So let's go forward and kind of define each of these parameters. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the list of assets. What are the things that in a computer system we call them assets? Assets include any type of resources in a computer system, and that includes hardware. Of course, in a computer system, based on what we have talked in the first lecture, in the lecture 0, we have processor, we have memory, we have different I/O, we have direct memory access, we have interrupt controllers, we have disks. All of those hardware that, of course, when we say hardware, it means that a piece of physical device that we can touch it, we can hold it, that's called the hardware component in a computer system. All of those hardware resources are called or are an example or a sample of assets in a computer system when we look at them from the security standpoint. So all of them are assets. The reason they're assets to us is we have paid for them, to be honest. And of course, when we pay something, we want to be able to use that resource at some point. So that's why we call them assets. And also we have software assets, including operating system, system applications, system utilities, and high level, or let's say system calls that are being offered by the operating system APIs. There are software components are also assets. Another important asset that this is the first time you see this definition or you hear this definition as asset is data. Data in a computer system is also considered an asset. The reason is that data is being produced after some computation, and we have bought a computer system. We paid for that computer system. and that computer system worked for example, such a for duration of time, let's say an hour or a day or maybe a year, whatever, it depends on the complexity of the problem, and the computer system has generated that data for us. So that data is important to us. So the data, which means whatever we have in the memory systems in our computer system, uh, is important to us, is a type of asset for us. So, like I said, when we say the data, it points to the data that is, which is a result of a long run or long time of processing. This is a first and the kind of easiest observation or understanding from when we say data is important. This is the first case that it comes in mind. But there are other types of data which are, again, we call them or we see them as assets. We have some data that they are security related data. For example, we have passwords. You have some password to protect your data. That password itself might not be the result of a long run or long process, but it is important for us because it is supposed to keep some of our long run data safe or secure. That's why passwords also. Other types of data, the instructions that we have in our memory, you have the memory next to your processor, and this memory, it has sequence of instructions. Those instructions, they are not basically, or let's say they're not usually results of a long run. They are just lists of instructions to be executed by the processor. So they might not seem very important, but even though they are not a result of a long run, even though we call them assets, because they might be somehow related to, for example, password or other important data to us. So let me generalize what I have said. Whatever we have in a computer system and it's in the form of data or information, that's an asset for us. We see that as asset. Okay, and the last and fourth, but not least type of the assets for us are services that we have in a computer system. You have your computer, and for example, let's say you have your CPU, and next to the CPU, you have your DMA, right? And this DMA is supposed to somehow communicate between the memory and I/O devices that you have. Okay, this is in fact a type of service that DMA offers to the CPU and through the CPU to the whole system. Of course, after this, you have the operating system here, and the operating system next to the operating system is a user. We may not directly use the DMA, but there are some services defined at the operating system level, and those services are somehow, let's say, work with DMA. So we call all of them as a services which are important to us. We have paid for the whole system to be able to use all the services designed. So the services are also called assets, or another type of asset. There, and whatever type of or whatever services you know in a computer system, all should be considered as assets. That includes internal services like DMA, or maybe external services that, for example, use to use some network communications or operating system services, I/O services, whatever. Okay, let's go forward and define the other unclear now terms that we have seen in that kind of NIST definition. We said that a information processing system should be able to make the system or keep the system confidential, keep the data integrity, and also should be available or keeps the system available. Okay, these three components that I kind of point to them, and you see them that I've marked them in red, they're called security triad or security triangle. Sometimes they call it CIAA. And it stands for confidentiality, C stands for confidentiality, I stands for integrity, and A stands for availability. And these are kind of the standard. There is a standard came out by NIST in 2004, which is called FIPS 199, and FIPS stands for Security Categorization for Federal Information and Information Systems. This is the abbreviation of FIPS. And FIPS 199, it defines these three as the pillars or as the major components of a secure computer system. Of course, if you see, there are two more items here that I'm going to talk about them, and they are not marked in red. Later, researchers have expanded the definition and said that, okay, if you want to have your computer system secure, on top of CIA, you also need to make sure that your system is capable of attaining authenticity and accountability. So these are the terms which are now I'm going to talk about them. Okay, let's get started with confidentiality. Confidentiality means that if I want to give you a kind of easy definition of confidentiality, it means that only legit and validated or authenticated users or agents should be able to modify the data. I'm sorry, should be able to read the data, should be able to access the data. That's called confidential. If we can assure about this property, we can say that our system is confidential. And here is kind of FIPS definition of confidentiality. It says enforcing and preserving authorized restrictions. It means some types of restrictions which are legit on information access and disclosure, which actually it's actually saying the same thing. It says that the information disclosure and access should be regulated through some authorized restrictions. It means that it should be regulated. There should be some procedures for that, including means for protecting personal privacy and proprietary information. So this is the confidentiality. It means that the information or the information assets in a computer system should be kept confidential. Only authenticated people should be able to read them or read that read the information. Okay, the next property is integrity. Integrity says guarding against improper information modification or destruction, including ensuring information non-repatriation and authenticity tampering. Okay, what it says, it's basically talking about authenticated or legit information modification or right. So you have in your computer system, you have some information, and that information, whatever it is it password or whatever, personal data, whatever, you want to keep that confidential. It means that no one other than you should be allowed to read that data. That's confidential. But another aspect of that is you don't want anyone to come and change your data. These two are different. Don't mix them. I might be an adversary, I might be an attacker. I might not have the permission or access to read the data, but I can change it. If such situations are prevented, if your system is kind of guaranteed against such thing, the system is called that it keeps integrity. So the integrity says no adversary or no unauthorized person is allowed to change my data, to change a protected data. Okay, the third thing, let me just add this, that the first two, confidentiality and integrity, they are talking about the data information. The third thing, which is availability, is talking about the whole system and the services. It says that in a computer system, you say that computer system keeps or offers availability if you can ensure that the system can provide all of these resources or all of its assets in a timely and reliable manner. It means that you have multiple resources, multiple assets. You want to use one of them, you want to access one of them or some of them. They should be available to you because you have paid for them. They should be available for you. You shouldn't have to wait, for example, for such a long time, or they shouldn't be, for example, working in a let's say 10% of their speed or something like that. They should be offered to us in a reliable and timely manner. Okay, the fourth thing is authenticity. It means that we should have the property of being genuine and being able to be verified and trusted. Okay, you are an authenticated agent or user, and you want to use your system. If the system keeps authenticity, it means that system is able to authenticate you, is able to know you, is able to recognize you. The system understands that, okay, this is the user number one, and this user number one is a legit, is a allowed person to access such and such information. Let him or her do that. That's authenticity. Uh, and in fact, the system should be able to detect between genuine or legit and fake users or agents. When I say agent, the reason I use these two terms, user or agent, is that sometimes a person or a human is the one who wants to, let's say, treat the system or use the system, or it might be a process. You have a computer system, you have many different applications. One of them may want to access some information from the other one. So the application is kind of an agent. So that's why I say agent. And the fifth or the last pillar of the security, based on the definition of FIPS, is called accountability. It means this, the security goal. This is a security goal that supports non-repudiation, deterrence, false isolation, intrusion detection and prevention, and after action recovery and legal action. Okay, what it says, it is basically saying that these are the two most important features that we need to kind of look at them for understanding accountability. It says that the system should have the feature and property of being non-repudiate. It means that if a user or an agent is accessing something or is using some asset or some data, that agent or person or user should not be able to later deny that usage. Shouldn't be able to say that, okay, it wasn't me, it was someone else. No, if someone has used something, we should be able to track that asset. Then we should be able to say that, hey, you have used this asset, you have used this piece of information, or this, for example, IO, or this portion of the memory at this time, and it was under your use, for example, for half an hour or for 10 minutes. That's accountability. The person or the agent shouldn't be able to kind of make fake claims about who has used or who has not used. These are 5 major properties that when we talk about secure computer system, we should be talking about each of these. Again, let's look at them. We talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and accountability. Okay. Uh, even if one of these, in the cases that one of these 5 features are somehow compromised because of some attacks or some threats that we later talked and kind of make the definition of threat and attack also clear, there might be some consequences for the system. Okay, those consequences, we can kind of levelize them in 3 levels. We say that the impacts of a compromise or impacts of a security breach might be low. In the case of low impact, we say that the loss of either of those features could be expected to have a limited adverse effects on the organizational operations or assets or individuals. Low impacts. For example, let's say One case might be, for example, you lose some of the files that you have stored, but those files are not that important. You have the backup of them. Or for example, let's say, I'm sure that you know what are the password, the browsers. You see that the browser saves your password. If you lose those temporary cache files, you would have to re-enter your password. So that's a low impact. In the moderate case, we say that the loss of either of those 5 pillars could be expected to have a serious adverse effect on organizational operations, organizational assets, or the individuals in the system. This is the moderate. In the high case, we say that the loss would have a severe to catastrophic adverse effect. So sometimes a catastrophe may happen. For example, if let's say, if I'm an attacker and I breach into the, for example, let's say underground navigation system, let's say in the New York City, I can change their schedule, and I can let, for example, 1 or 2 of them come at the intersection at the same time, and a catastrophe will happen. So this is a high impact situation that violation of either of those 5 pillars end up making a severe to catastrophic situation for us. Okay, now let's talk about general challenges that we have for making our computer systems secure. There are general challenges that are kind of, we don't want to talk about them in details and technically. We are just talking high level at this lecture. Okay, one of the challenges is that computer security is not as simple as it might first appear. The reason somehow this itself might not be let's say a separate challenge, but at the same time, it kind of tricks people, because at the first place we might not have a good background about security, and we say that okay, it shouldn't be very difficult to make this system secure. But we are talking about a kind of a two-sided play between us and between some attacking teams or some attackers. So when I talk about other challenges, we'll return and talk about this, and you'll see that it's actually very challenging and difficult. Okay, in developing a particular security mechanism or algorithm, one must always consider potential attacks. Okay, we should always be thinking about potential attacks on all of those security features. If you remember, we talked about 5 security features. We should be considering every single security attack on all of those features if you want to make our computer system secure. Which by itself somehow shows the level of complexity, because you have 5 property, you have 5 pillars. You need to make sure that none of them are will be compromised in the real run of that system. Physical and logical placement of the system matter. Physical placement of a system matter because if you place your system in a physically non-secure place, it might be altered. Security might be compromised through some physical attacks. There are some attacks that they need physical access to the system. We have some attacks. For example, let's say, let's give you a very easy example. You have a server which, let's say, all the airplanes or let's say underground trains are going to connect it to get some routing information. If I'm an attacker, the easiest thing for me is just to shut the system down. So if you don't make your system physically secure, I can do that. So physical placement plus logical placement, both of them matter. Okay, number 4 item, it says security mechanisms typically require the participant to be in the possession of some secret information. Okay, this kind of challenge. It talks about the fact that if you want to keep a system secure, it means that at the end of the day, the user needs to have or needs to keep some type of information secret. The easiest thing that it comes to your mind is a password. If you have a system which is supposed to be secure, a legit or authorized user have to keep some types of password. Okay, that password now itself make some problems, because that password, now the question is, how should I generate that password? How are we going to create that password? How are we going to distribute that password? That password is very important. If you are going to, for example, email it to me, now your email also needs to be secure, because you are sending me something very important. If you want to mail it to me, your mail should be secure. Once you send it to me, I should also keep it secure. I cannot, for example, write it on a piece of paper and put it on my desk, because that's an important piece of information. So creation, distribution, and protection of that secret information now matter. And if the user or the creator or the distributor, they cannot make sure that that piece of information is kept secure, the system security also may be compromised. Okay, the fifth challenge says attackers only need to know or need to find single weakness or single vulnerability, while the designer or let's say the security designer, I would like to add a word security here, because the security designer must find and eliminate or address all the weaknesses. This is again a kind of dimension that shows the complexity of making or having a computer system secure. Okay, number 6, it says security is still too often an afterthought to be incorporated into a system. It basically says that designers mainly think about the security or see the security this way, that, okay, let me first design my system. When I'm done with the design, when I've implemented everything, now I come to you and we talk about its security. We should probably be able to do something at that level to make my system secure. This is the kind of, let's say, view or standpoint that most of non-security engineers they have, which is of course incorrect. Because, for example, if you are designing a processor and you are not considering DMA attacks, we have some attacks at the hardware level. I'm not going to go to the detail, but of course, from the name, you understand that it relates to the DMA. If you are not considering the DMA vulnerabilities when you are designing the DMA into your processor, you can never ever fix that using some piece of code or some software, unless you totally turn the DMA off, which is, even that one is not possible in some cases. So this is not a legit or valid way that we say, okay, let's design or implement our system. We can later think about its security. Okay, security requires regular and constant monitoring. We cannot say, okay, we have designed the system and we thought about its security, it's okay, let's go and just, for example, let the system for itself, it works on its own. No, that's not the case. If you care about the security, you should be regularly checking, you should be regularly assessing your system and monitoring your system. Okay, there is a natural tendency on the part of the users and system managers to perceive little benefit from security investment. Okay, this challenge says that this is something somehow close to this one from the managers and designers and the users point of view. It says that they say, okay, it doesn't worth to, it's not worth it to invest for security. Probably that's not my case. That thing will not happen to my system. This is the standpoint and kind of mindset that most of managers they have until they face to the first failure, first kind of big problem. That's the time that they realize the value of the security, and after that probably they would be ready to look at the vulnerabilities of their system, and of course put time and energy and pay for that. That's the main issue. And lastly, it says the last challenge, the challenge number 9, it says many users and even security administrators view strong security as an impediment to efficient and user-friendly operation. That's again something which I'm not completely kind of disagree with this, because there might be some security solutions that slow the system down. For example, I remember from my personal experience that I used to use Norton Commander or something, which was a type of firewall, and I remember that it it used to slow down the system, let's say by 40%. So, but of course that's not the case for all security solutions. But some of them are not user friendly. Some of them slow the system down or make some restrictions which are not kind of interest of the users. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a few other terms and terminologies in the security domain. The first thing is adversary. Adversary or threat agent is any individual, group, organization. They might be a group. I'm sure that you have heard about cyber attacks. That they say, for example, that government was supporting that group, such group. So sometimes there are not one person. There are multiple security engineers sit somewhere and they work for, let's say, 6 months on something. For example, hack some website or hack some system. So any individual, group, organization, or even a government that conducts or has the intent to conduct a harmful activity toward a information processing system. So countermeasure is any device or technique that tries to prevent attacks. So I know some security attacks. This term is not defined. We also talk about attacks in few moments, probably in the next slide or maybe a slide after that. We'll talk about attacks, but we know some attacks, or we have detected some attacks, or let's say some attacks have has happened to our system, and now we want to protect our system against that specific attack. So the action that we will be taking, the action that or the update that we will be doing on our system, the patch that we're going to apply to our system, that's called countermeasure. And the countermeasure, it might be a hardware countermeasure. You change something. You say, okay, this processor is not good for me. Let's change it. Or you say that this amount of memory is not good. I need to expand it. Or this type of memory is not good. Or this type of I/O, my system shouldn't be able to work with that type of I/O. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change. So the countermeasure might be hardware solution, might be a piece of software, might be a operating system update. I'm sure that whatever operating system you're using, you see that they're continuously prompting you that, okay, we need to update. And once you update this, they give you a report that what has been updated. Most of the time they say, okay, bug fix or security patches. It means that something has been changed in our operating system code in order to improve the security of our system. Security policies, it defines the constraint. It defines kind of constraints and activities of the data processing facility in order to maintain a condition of security for the system. A set of constraint and regulation which are defined by the administrator or by the designer or by both of them in order to preserve or maintain a security condition. When we say a security condition, it means that, for example, we want to have our system immune against, let's say, attack number one, attack A, attack B, attack C. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to do. And if you of course define some security policies to keep your system protected against attacks A, B, and C. And that type of regulations and constraint and definitions make sure that your system security will be kept in a level that you're always protected against attacks A, B, and C. Of course, if there is attack number, let's say E, your system by definition was not supposed to be secure. So that's why we say a security condition or a security level. Okay, and now let's talk about a very important chain that we have in the security domain. We talk about some we have vulnerability, and then risk, and then threat, and then attack. These are somehow related. What is vulnerability? Vulnerability is any type of weakness in our information system or in the security procedures or internal controls or whatever are related about our system or even implementation that could be exploited or triggered by a threat. Any weakness in our information system that could be exploited by a threat. So the first thing in our chain is vulnerability. Okay, let me go to the second one. The second thing is a threat. I'll return to risks. What is threat? Any circumstance or event with the potential to adversely impact the system. Any situation or any event that can potentially impact the security of our system. It has not done anything negative or bad to the security of our system, but it has that potential. It has that capability to adversely or negatively impact the security of our system. Any circumstance or event with the potential to adversely impact our system, including organizational operations, assets, and individuals. When we say our system, we talk about organizational operations, assets, and individuals. And the third thing we have in our chain is attack. Attack is any kind of malicious activity. That threat now is being used by someone to implement some real attacks or to implement some malicious activities in order to collect some information or disrupt some information or deny some services or degrade the system or destroy the information, whatever. Types, these are all examples that each of them somehow try to violate one of those 5 security pillars that we counted. So any real activity or any real malicious activity that try to compromise one of our security features, that's called an attack. So you see, this is a chain. We need to have some type of vulnerability in our system, and then vulnerability turns into some threat. The attacker comes, it detects vulnerabilities, it finds some threats or defines some threats based on the vulnerability, and then implements or uses the threat in a real kind of scenario and attack to our system. So we say vulnerabilities, they result into threats, and the threats results into attacks. Okay, now here, let me talk about the last one, that actually the second one that I kind of missed it. That's risk. The risks are not in our kind of chain, but they're important because of course everything in this chain starts with vulnerability, and we don't want to uh, kind of be blind about the vulnerabilities that we have in our computer system. So I have a computer system or information processing system. Can I somehow get some estimation or some clue about the levels of vulnerability that I have in my system? That's called risk assessment. Oh, okay. Now let's define risk is a measure that we use it in order to kind of measure or understand or realize the amount of security vulnerabilities that we have. And so a measure of the extent to which any entity is threatened by a potential circumstance or event. Typically, typically when we talk about risks, we are talking about two things, or risks are function of two things. First one is the adverse impacts that would arise if that risk kind of changes into threat and then to attacks. And then, so what are the outcomes of that circumstance or that vulnerability or threat? How the outcomes are they low? If you remember in this slide, we talked about the outcome. We said that some of them are in terms of importance, some of them are we classify them as low, moderate, or high. So here, when we talk about risk, this is the same thing. So how the adverse impacts or the negative impacts are big. And then secondly, what is the likelihood? What is the probability of occurring them? Because some vulnerabilities or threats might have very big or very negative outcomes, but their probability might be, for example, let's say 0. They may not never ever happen. So we shouldn't count them as a real risk. Or some vulnerabilities might be very probable, but their outcome is very kind of low or very easy to cope with. Again, they are not big risks to our system. So when we say risk, it's somehow the multiplications of these two. The kind of the bigness of the outcome times the probability of that outcome. Okay, here is a kind of a chart that shows the relation between the concepts that we have. This is what the book has used, and this is my version. I updated it because I think this is a more kind of accurate. If you look at this, we say that here we have owner, the owner of the system, of the information processing system, who values the assets. Assets are important things to the owner. Of course, owner, if he or she finds some vulnerabilities or some threats, he or she may patch some countermeasure in order to reduce risks to these assets. This is kind of, this part is the owner part. Okay. This part is the owner's part. And also here at the right side, we have the, let's say, attacker or adversary activity. Attacker or threat agent, he or she seeks vulnerabilities, tries to find vulnerabilities in order to define or increase the threats to our system, and through that, it finally implements some security attacks to assets. And of course, by defining or finding new threats, it increases the risk to our assets. Okay, about vulnerabilities and attacks, of course, all vulnerabilities, we shouldn't see all of them in the same category, we have multiple categories of vulnerabilities, but it's easy to categorize them. We have some vulnerabilities that they end up kind of affecting the integrity of our system. Because of them, we lose our integrity, or the system loses its integrity. They are called corrupted vulnerabilities. We have leaky vulnerabilities that they end up, or if they are being used by an attacker to implement an attack, that attack is going to kind of target the confidentiality of our system. They are called leaky vulnerabilities. And we have unavailable or vulnerabilities that they relate to kind of unavailability. And of course, by the name, it's clear that if an attacker uses these vulnerabilities in order to implement an attack, what is going to be violated, what is going to be compromised will be the availability of our system. So this is a kind of pretty straightforward categorization for the vulnerabilities that we have in a computer system. We also have a categorization for the attacks. We have, from one standpoint, we have two types of attacks. Attacks might be passive or might be active. A passive attack is an attack that attempts to violate either of those 5 security pillars without affecting the system resources. Without affecting the system resources. For example, let me give you an example. If I write a program that that is going to be run in your computer and looks at your keyboard and read the keys that you are hitting, which is a type of attack that we know. They are called keyloggers. Keylogger. This is not affecting your resources. It means that you, as a normal user or authorized user, you will never see any change in your system. Your system works, keyboard work, monitor works, your mail is working, everything is working, but at the same time, someone is kind of stealing your secret information, your password. So the system resources here is not affected, is kept kind of unchanged. But in active attacks, the attacker attempts to, while the attacker actually, let me put it this way, while the attacker attempts to implement the attack, the system resources will be affected. For example, if I want to intentionally inject power supply disturbances. Power supply disturbances is one case was the example I gave you. If I have physical access and I come and just shut down your server, your important server, that's power supply disturbance attack. So that type of attack has a real impacts on this resources. Resources will not be available for some moments or for some hours, whatever. Okay, another categorization for the attacks is insider and outsider. If the attack is initiated by something inside the system, that's called an insider attack. For example, the keylogger is a good example of insider, because that's something inside your program and it starts from your program. Sorry, it starts in your computer. That's a program starts in your computer and tries to look at information and kind of extract information from your computer. So everything, the attacking agent and the attacked system, or the target system, or the victim system, sometimes they call it target or victim, they're all one computer. That's inside. And for outsider, attacking computer or attacking agent and the victim computer, there are two different computers. So you have an agent. All of the internet-based attacks are actually outsider. You have this victim machine or victim system, and also you have the attacking system. This guy, the agent from here, uses this computer to attack another computer. This is an outsider attack. Here are more kind of explanations about active and passive. Passive attempts to learn or make use of information from the system, but does not affect the system resources, like this eavesdropping, or eavesdropping is kind of listening to the information or monitoring of transmission information being transmitted on, for example, let's say wireless channel, or let's say wired channel. Goal of the attacker is to obtain information, but of course, it's you don't feel anything because the data is being transmitted and is being delivered correctly, so your connection is doesn't show anything. And here are active examples. Alter the system, like for example, again, this is these are network examples of active attacks. For example, replay attack. In a replay attack, I resend the information that I as an attacker, I am the adversary, I'm an attacker. I listen to the packets that you have sent, I save it somewhere, and once you're done, I send it on my own, and I introduce myself as you. So this is a replay attack, and of course it is an active attack. Okay, I think it should be enough for this recording. I continue talking about this lecture in the next video, and I think we will be able to finish this lecture in this week, and that keeps us right on our track. Okay, today's attendance code is CST, all lowercase. CST, all lowercase. Thank you for making today, and have a good rest of the day.